All right, we are recording. We
Nice.
actually don't have a name for the show quite yet, but that's all right because I even feel that if you have a child, you probably shouldn't name it till it's at least 5 because if it's not going to survive to be 5, why put in the investment?
I hear you.
That's actually
Have an
just a
unnamed
core.
podcast, unnamed child for a while.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We'll probably think of something. I just forgot. That was like one of the things I totally forgot. Anyway, hi everybody. My name is Brandon. This is
Howdy.
Pascal. And we're here to talk about different things. And the first thing we're here to talk about um is it has to do, I guess you could call it maritime law, but it just has to do with the law system that we have and that we exist in. And there's basically a hidden skeleton behind that which people can operate in, and they have operated in, and we've seen some people operate in with some success. So we wanted to talk about that a little bit, introduce it to some people, and then maybe try it for ourselves. Because could it be one of us might have to? I don't know who it is, but one of us might have to send out and use some of this law for ourselves to see how it actually
Could
works.
it be?
Could it be?
Could it be that we're living in a fraudulent system?
Could it
Could it
be?
be that those cops are road pirates and that they're acting illegally?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are some great questions. Do you have any evidence to support those questions? And that, I can't even say accusations because you're asking questions. So
This true. It is a question. Hey, I don't know anything. At the end of the day, I'm ignorant. I'm a retard. I'm stupid. I don't know the law.
exactly,
And if you don't know the law, how can it be held against you, right? Could it be?
especially if I'm just asking questions. So I think the first thing I should ask you is how did you come across what we'll call this knowledge or this set of knowledge skills?
So I didn't find the knowledge per se. It was more like a hunt for quite a long time. So I'd say relatively early on in life, maybe I want to say it was like anywhere between 13 and 15 was when I really noticed that there was these things that people were assuming control over their life, and I recognized that, hey, wait a minute, this thing is not actually controlling you. Like, you can make your own decision, but your people are just kind of allowing it to control them. And a good example of that is building codes, tax codes. A city or a department saying, "Hey, you can't build that there." Well, why not? It's my property, right? I should be able to build whatever I want. But these little arbitrary things that they kind of come in and say you can or can't do, like speed limit says 25. Well, I've seen people going 26 or 27. So what is it? Is it 25 or is it 27? So things just didn't add up for me at that age. And I started looking into it, but I wouldn't say I found any real answers until maybe a couple years ago, and I still don't have any real answers. It's just the puzzle is starting to come together in the sense that I can start seeing the final picture now. Um, and that's been pretty enlightening too, because once you understand that everything you're doing with the system, you're required to assume and presume all of it. If you um, well, actually, let me give an example. When an officer pulls you over and they walk up to your car, one of the first things out of their mouth is license and registration. And so, right there, by giving it to them, you have just kind of answered their assumption that you are driving or traveling under that license and registration because you gave it to them as soon as they asked. So it's little things like that. You've now put yourself in their control, and they made the um, they basically walked up and they got you to agree to that little transaction there that you are driving under that license and under that registration. And it's little things like that. If you don't agree to it, then it doesn't stick. So I've been looking for alternative ways to um, live life without agreeing to some of the nonsense, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense actually. It's I had a kind of a different adventure with it because when I'm a little older than you. So when I was younger, I was in the Marine Corps, and I was in North Carolina, so I was in foreign territory, and I had Connecticut license plates, and I had a Monte
Oof.
Carlo. I had a 1987 Monte Carlo SS with T tops and a heavy foot. Uh,
That'll
but
attract just a little attention.
yeah, yeah, everybody was pulling me over, and the thing was, the way it works in Connecticut, I'm so used to just interstates everywhere, and you could drive like 10 miles over, no one really bothers you, and there's not a lot of police presence. But down there, it's like, these 2-lane roads that are highways everywhere where it's supposed to be 55. And then they slow down to 35 and you forget, and then you get like a reckless, it's crazy. So I used to fight them a bunch in court, and I did okay. I won a couple times. The first time I had no idea. But like you said, I just give up my rights because I have no idea. They're like license and registration. I just hand it over. Do you know why we pulled you over? They're basically
Yeah.
asking you uh to
Throw yourself under the bus.
yeah, to
Yeah.
self-incriminate yourself right away. And I feel that if you don't do that, yeah, you're gonna be much better off.
Yeah. I mean, from what I remember, aren't the police supposed to protect us, the people? Isn't that
Mm,
their whole job is to protect and serve? But protect and serve me with what? A citation? You
yes.
know?
Somewhere along the way, our safety was it was taking a backseat to, like, like you said, tax collection or road pirates or whatever is going on.
Yeah.
Crazy. But yeah, so going back to giving people your license and registration, so somebody might say to you, well, if the police pull you over, aren't you obligated to give them your license and registration? No.
Sure, if you don't want to get shot. I
Right.
mean,
Yeah. That's
at
a
the end
good
of the
point.
day,
That's a good point.
um, you don't want to be practicing law on the side of the road. I've heard that said in a couple groups that I'm in, and it's really true. Um, you don't want to be arguing with a cop. I mean, think about it. An officer gets 6 months of training, and a lawyer has to go to school for a minimum of 4 years just to learn half of it. They're only learning how to prosecute or defend. They're not even learning the full deal. They're learning how to do half of the job. And an officer goes to school for 6 months. So their training in comparison to a lawyer is, it's negligible. So you don't want to be in the position of arguing with them. And another thing that I've learned is you don't want to say no. It's always a conditional acceptance. Like, oh, I'd be happy to do that if you can provide me with X, Y, and Z. Um, it because as from my understanding, as soon as you say no, you're now creating a disturbance, and that's you're kind of without realizing it stepping into their jurisdiction again because they can come in and say, oh, well, you're creating a disturbance and we're here to resolve that. And you don't really want to be on their playing field at all. And another thing too is if it's a citation, then that's a completely different thing. That's an administrative court sort of situation. It's not if you weren't doing anything that was unlawful. You didn't run someone over, you didn't cause damage, you didn't harm someone, you didn't drive onto someone's lawn and rip out their front bushes. You didn't. There is no injured party per se because that would be handled a little differently. And so I think knowing these different things allows people to kind of prepare for how they should respond when an officer pulls them over.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you don't want to get it into an argument, and that's really the
Mm-mm.
last thing that you want to do. I mean, sometimes you could, depending on the police officer, if they're reasonable, you could speak to them about it and work your way through. But like an example that I'm going to be probably going through allegedly. I actually cooperated when I first spoke with the police. I just wanted to, because I've learned a lot of this stuff, so I just wanted to see what their reaction would be. So at first I told them I wasn't going to give my name and all this stuff. And they were okay with all that, but then when it came to the registration and the insurance information, that's when they started to kind of fight me about it. And
Yeah,
since I already had a plate displayed anyway, it wasn't really a big deal because they can already get the information. So
yeah,
I just was like, I yielded there, but I just wanted to see how far I could get and to see what their reaction would be. And they didn't seem too familiar. It seems like they're familiar with something else they might have heard of. Um, they were kind of like asking me other different questions, but I was just telling them that I'm not a man because they said that there's regulations and there's code that deals with the road, and I said, well, as a man, I'm only subject to laws. I'm not a person. Like, I'm a man, right? And he's like, yeah. So once I got him to agree to that, I know I was good. But
Now, did you get him to agree that he was also a man?
I can't remember honestly because I've been watching too many videos lately, so I don't want to bleed it over and try to think too hard because that happens sometimes. Like,
Yeah,
wait, did that
yeah,
happen in
yeah.
the video? Or yeah, I can't remember, but I do remember saying it's because I'm a man. I don't think I did ask him though. Next time though, I
Because
definitely
that's
am.
another thing that it can almost let you know if they're aware of the game that's being played too. Because if
Yeah,
they admit that they're a man, then it's like, oh, buddy, you just
yeah,
you pulled yourself out of jurisdiction there for a second. You're no longer acting in the title.
yeah,
So it's interesting because they can put themselves in the line.
yeah, and they can leave themselves personally liable for things.
Oh,
And I think that's another area where you can, if they're willing to listen to you, um, and you're in a situation, especially say if it's a mask situation or it's a situation where, like you said, you didn't harm anybody or cause any property damage, you could just let them know that technically, you're a man or a woman. If you're listening to this, you haven't broken any laws, and am I free to go? And if not, then you can tell them that technically they're kidnapping you or they're holding
yeah.
you hostage because you haven't broken any laws and you have to get on your way, and if not, they have to suffer those consequences. And the other thing you can also point out is that they have liability insurance, and if they
Yes.
don't adhere to the standards and rules and regulations of that insurance, then that leaves their insurance wide open, and they can get sued, personally liable and their company. So
It's like when people are trained or kind of coached into asking like, "What is your license?" I mean, your name and badge number. You should also ask, "What is your name, badge number, and indemnity insurance?"
yeah,
And that hopefully should raise a couple eyebrows on their side because it's, wait a minute, this guy's asking for my insurance. Ooh, now they know it could be holding them, personally liable, and that's hopefully it'll get them to think twice about making accusations. I mean, just the other day, I got pulled over and I was in a minor accident with my vehicle, and the front end of my car is really messed up. And I was driving on the highway, and this is in the rain, and an officer pulled me over, a state trooper, and this is in Mass, so they're a little anal up in Mass. They're nuts. And the guy
you don't
came over.
say. No.
Yeah, I do. Um, they're Yeah, they also had a couple investigations into them, but that's for another topic.
Could it be? No.
Could it be? Um, so anyway, he asked me for the license registration, and I was holding my license in my hand, and I was just like, "Oh, well, why'd you pull me over?" And I wouldn't quite give it to him yet, and he goes, "Oh, well, I'll tell you that as soon as you give me your license." I was like, "Oh, that's how it's going to work." Okay. And then I just handed him my license, and I had it all in recording. And when he came back, he said, "Well, the reason I pulled you over is because you had a taillight out." And that was news to me because, as far as I knew, all the lights on my car worked. I was having an electrical issue with one of the lights, and that was due to the accident. And so I was pretty familiar with the mechanical and electrical workings of my car. I was like, "Oh, well, that is news to me, officer. I'll get that taken care of right away. I'll get off of the next exit, and that'll be taken care of as soon as possible. I want to give this guy no room to give me a ticket or anything." And I was genuinely concerned about it. And so he was like, "Okay, well, I'm just going to give you a verbal warning." And oh, the other thing too, I had a crack on my windshield. And he tried saying, he was like, "Oh, well, you can't see out of that." I'm like, "What are you talking about? I can see just great. I see just fine." Like, of course I can see out of my windshield. So I didn't want to agree to it because as soon as I even agreed a little bit, now I've given him enough reason to give me a ticket. I didn't want to do any of that. So he let me go with a verbal warning. I get off in the next exit, go to a gas station. Sure as shit, all my lights are working great. There's not a single one of them out. I'm like, that guy lied. And so
Mm.
I think they do it all the time. And not enough people are holding them accountable because we kind of been raised in the system that it's like, "Oh, well, the guy in the lab coat said it. It must be true. The guy with the police uniform said it. That's the authority." Oh, just because it's the EMT or the firefighter, supreme knowledge of whatever field they represent, and we shouldn't really take that as it is. You know, you want to verify everything,
Yeah.
and it's just it was nuts that how the whole situation played out because he lied and he followed me all the way to the exit, and then as soon as I was pulling into the gas station, he turned around and took off. So he knew I was going to check my lights, just like I told him. It's it's nuts how that works.
Yeah, and it's interesting his choice of words because if you got it exactly right, if you remembered, he said, "I pulled you over for a broken tail light." He didn't say, "I pulled
Yeah.
you over because you had a broken tail light." He's like, "I'm pulling you over, and the reason is for a broken tail light, even though you don't have one. That's still the reason."
Yep.
You know, it's like the words that they use, and that really brings us to like all of what we're talking about here with this information about the law. It really has to do with the words because in
Yes.
my opinion, and we talked about this before on another call about words and how the meanings of words have changed over the years and people don't really understand. And just like the word understand, when you say that, if somebody asks you, like a police officer, if they say, you were speeding, do you understand? If you say you understand, that means that you stand under what they say and that you're like, yes, and you're basically agreeing to it. So you have to be careful
So what
what you agree to.
I do agree with that because that is like the etymology of the words. And I failed grammar numerous times in high school. I'm a dropout, so grammar was never a strong suit of mine. And you are right because this all hinges on words. And it's like you're not driving, you're traveling. You know, driving is only when you're doing commerce. Like if you're delivering Domino's pizza, you're a driver. You know, that's you're not traveling from point A to point B. You're not even moving your property. You're on the clock. You basically belong to a corporation during that time. And the words are just that's profound because everything hinges on that. You know, and in law there is no synonyms. Every word has its own individual meaning. So you can't say something and be like, "Oh, well, you know what I meant, judge." No, 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 no. That word has one meaning and one meaning only. It doesn't mean other things. And that's where, you know, like you'd said, I pulled you over for a broken tail light. It's so key, dude. So key. And the more I'm realizing that, the more it's making me want to go back and learn grammar and English and all
Yeah, well,
that.
that's
It's
great.
wild.
Because I feel that geometry was kind of ruined for me because I had a teacher who was terrible. And guys, don't feel bad for me because I ended up when I started doing stand-up comedy, my father still works at that school. And some crazy coincidence, the principal that didn't really know me wanted me to put on a comedy show for the teachers during the day, and it was like a surprise comedy show for them. And I had been doing comedy for 2 months, so I got a couple other guys that had been doing it longer and scheduled the show for him, and I just hosted it. And what I did the night before, like a couple days before, I made jokes for all the teachers that I knew that were there that I hated, and I just roasted them in between comedians. It was just me up there roasting these teachers that had no idea they were going to even be at a comedy show. It was great. Oh, and so I got to roast,
Surprise.
yeah, my former geometry teacher. That's why I should have been like, you know what? This is how I know there's a God because I could. She's just squirming. I'm like, oh, I forgot what I even said, but yeah. But now I realize that geometry is beautiful, and you have sacred geometry and the way it fits in. And words are the
Yeah.
same thing if you just stop and listen. And what that also brings me to what I wanted to say is it really just has to do with people's attention. I feel like these days more
Yes.
than ever, people's attention is so spread thin and it's so everywhere that they don't realize what we're saying. And it's so simple. It's kind of like Jedi mind tricks with people.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah.
And I actually want to make a skit where I break it down to where, you take the Jedi mind trick scene, the classic one, these aren't the droids you're looking for. Obi-Wan pulls up, the stormtroopers stop him. The stormtroopers are looking at him, right? And then he's like, "We're looking for these droids." And Obi-Wan goes, "These aren't the droids you're looking for." And then the difference is, though, that the two stormtroopers back up and they say to each other, one's like, "Dude, those are totally the droids we're looking for." And the other one's like, "Yeah, but that dude's got a lightsaber, bro. Did you see that? He's going to cut us in half." And then they go, "Okay, you're right. These aren't the droids they're looking for." And they let him go. And then after, Luke is like, "Wow, that was amazing. That mind control." And Obi-Wan's like, "Don't be stupid." He's like, "They saw my lightsaber. They didn't want to get cut in half." Like, That's
Yeah.
kind of more how it works. That might even be like a Robot Chicken sketch. But anyway, that's more how I feel it could work, because if you just talk to these people, especially these days, the police that I've been interacting with, they really don't want a problem because of all these things that are going on. It's
Yes.
not like 2018. They don't have the same cockiness that they did. Even those, I dealt with
Yes.
state troopers on the side of the highway looking like this, long hair, but anyway, they were really cool, and not like before, because trust me, it's not just because I'm white. I got pulled over like back in the day. I used to have short hair. I was a Marine. I'd get pulled over and I'd get screamed at and like almost beat up. Yeah, trust me, it's not like I don't think it's like maybe it's a color thing sometimes, but I think it's a class thing for sure. Like if they know that you're just some poor
Yeah,
piece of
for
shit, they
sure.
don't care. They'll just fucking walk all over you.
Yep.
But maybe black people more. I don't know. I'm just saying, it's my
I definitely
experience.
think
Like,
so. In my experience, I drove a Civic for a while,
yeah,
and when I was driving around with a hat on, they couldn't tell my complexion. Oh yeah, I got pulled over all the time. Cops would just pull up next to me, behind me, follow me for a couple blocks, all kinds of things like that. And it's funny too because there's been a couple times where I'll pass by cops wearing a hat, and then I'll take the hat off and I'll look at them, and they'll see me, and then I'll just keep on going. But the times that I haven't, where I had the hat on, there have been three occasions where I was pulled over, and it's like you could see their demeanor change a little bit as they're approaching the car, and then I take my hat off, because I want them to see me. I'm not trying to get shot. Let's both leave here and go see our family. Got a
yeah,
wife and kids, man. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So
exactly.
I'm not trying to
Well,
do
also,
anything absurd.
taking the hat off itself is kind of a sign of respect. And when you look
Yeah.
at him and smile, because if you're up to no good in criminal behavior, you're not going to make eye contact with the police,
Right.
or if you
Right.
do, it's going to be. So that has a lot to do with it too. But I also know somebody who is from Barbados. So he's like dark skinned, but he's like, I would say like the whitest guy I know. I don't even know if that's like offensive to people, but yeah, he's hilarious. So I love him. But he was in a situation where he almost got, like, I don't know, beat up or shot by police just because he was in the wrong neighborhood, like waiting for somebody with flyers because he was a DJ back in the day. And then he got surrounded
Shoot.
by cops in like Trumbull, Connecticut, and he's like, dude, what the hell? Because he was in like a nice car or whatever, they thought he stole it. But yeah, so trust me, I know that crap happens. But that's why we're saying also, don't be a lawyer on the side of the highway. But if you think
Yeah.
you're talking to a police officer, especially these days, they're open to it. And especially like I've been doing, I try to include them. I'm like, it's us. Cause I say, listen, I was in the Marines. I was an MP for 6 months. I got to volunteer and do it. So like, I get it. I wore a badge and a gun, man. I'm on your side, like this is just bullshit,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Uh, listen, I know the law. Like you tell him, like, this isn't personal. I always tell him, this isn't personal. I'm not here to like fight you, man. I'm just letting you know this is what I found out. And it's crazy, right? Yeah, I know, but it's true. Like someone's taking advantage of us. Could it
Yep.
be? We're on the same
Could it
side
be?
here. You don't want to fight with the police because you're not going to win. Because they
No.
got more people. They could keep calling them. They keep showing up. So if you can't, or you don't think it's the right time to do it on the side of the road, just take the ticket. Whatever you got to do, you can sign it. You could always sign like under duress or whatever. But everything you do, it's most of it is just not admitting anything, just keeping your mouth shut, doing what you have to do to get that police officer away from you. Because later you can always claim you were under duress and you're like, listen, I was just doing this. If you never admit anything and say you just sign a ticket, you could just say, listen, I was just signing the ticket because he had a gun and we're on the side of the road. I don't know. I'm not going to go against what he says.
Yeah. And regarding the signing the ticket thing as well, one of the things I think people should look into, I don't have the answer per se, but there's been some rumors about putting like a three dots next to like your signature, as well as there was a two-letter abbreviation basically, which was a Latin phrase for under duress. And then there's other
Nice.
things like putting your signature
Fucking love it.
inside of a box. So you're
Yeah.
basically only agreeing to what's in the box. Little things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like you want to do that when the officer isn't quite paying attention. So you seem like you're going along with it. But yeah, when that gets brought before a judge, that judge is absolutely going to know this isn't admissible. This was written under duress. None of this can be held against them. And from a little bit of my research over the past year or two, what I found out is that'll get thrown out. The judge won't use it because they can't. And I've seen people's mugshots, their fingerprints, evidence, other things like that get thrown out because everything it wasn't signed correctly. And there was even a situation where a guy got fingerprinted, and the judge was like, "You need to fingerprint him," and the cops didn't want to do, it, and the cops were like, "No, we have his fingerprints right here." And but the judge, in court, it's not the judge's position to explain to the cop why that's not admissible. Like the cop should already know that. That's his job. And so they're like, nope, this can't be used. You need new fingerprints. But it's situations like that, that it's the little things that people don't know. And if I think we start educating people and enough people are learning how to do it and recording things and sharing the information, we can kind of all teach each other how to get out of this mess because I never agreed to this. I was born into it. I just
Mm,
woke up to the nightmare that I was living in and everyone else
hallelujah.
was living in. And people are telling me, no, no, this is normal. You need to do this. Well, why?
Normal. Ooh.
Yeah, right.
There's another word for
Normal.
you. Look that word up,
Yeah.
everybody. We don't have time for that, but you can look that one up on your
Oof.
own time. That's what I
I
like
will
to tell
have to.
people too, these days. Instead of waking people up, I'm like, listen, if you're really interested, go look it up yourself. Here,
Yeah.
I wrote the podcast, I did the video, I did I wrote the blog, I told the podcast, I made the video, I made the memes. It's like I'm done, like go look it up
Yeah.
yourself. If you
Yeah.
don't know about Carrie Mullis, anyway. So another thing I wanted to say before I get into my like individual situation is the reason why I think this stuff works is because I feel people in positions of power, we can all, anyone listening to this, I'm sure we can all agree that there's corruption. And I feel that one of the ways that corruption is allowed to exist is because of these words. And if you want to say they're like spells, that's kind of like what they are. These words, the way people talk, they don't, not everybody's conscious of it. Like the cop that said, I pulled you over for a broken taillight. He didn't, he wasn't conscious that he might have been saying some kind of spell, but he was just saying, I'm covering myself. I'm just going to say, oh, it looked like from my angle, it was
Yeah.
broken. So that's why I was pulling you over, whatever. He was just leaving himself a back door. Now, that is dishonest if you think about it, right? Think like if me and you had a society, it was just me and you and like 100 people, we're not going to do that to each other. We're not going to talk and double speak and leave back doors because our word is our bond. We're not going to.
Yeah.
So this is where the corruption comes from. Now, if you just take the principle of as above, so below, and you just put that to say just our local corruption, like Congress and what's going on in the government. So if these people exist in this realm where what they do is they just keep leaving themselves back doors. They don't mean exactly what they say, or they just, or they're just really out for themselves. At the end of the day, is really what it is. If you boil it down, this kind of stuff, and I'm not saying it's bad, it's just like a tool. That's why we're going to use it because we are out for ourselves, but we're going to try to use it together in a way to defend ourselves against this corruption, right? So, getting back to the corruption, this is how it's allowed to exist. They use these spells, quote unquote, these word tricks to trick us into just kind of existing. Think of like birds, right? If you had a
Yeah.
whole flock of birds and they just tweet, 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 but then one day one learned how to talk and then he could just convince the other birds that he was the bird king, and then they just followed him. And all the other birds are like, what the hell are these birds doing? That's kind of how I feel is what's going on. So for this is just a way to defend yourself from that backwards fake, because it's not alignment with nature. Just like I said, the birds are just existing. I think that humans in the wild wouldn't exist like this. We would kind of just get along. Somebody likes to do this, someone else likes to do that. We would do that. I mean, we can even have, regular societies with rule,
Right.
with rules, just not anybody that wants to be the one in charge. But I'm getting way too far away. But that's the reason why I want to look into this, though, because and why I think it's effective is because it's exactly the same kind of tools that they're using. The people that think they're in control, the people in corrupt spots in government, they're using this shield in these words. So then if you come at the system with these same words and they don't validate it, therefore they will be unvalidating themselves, so they can't do that.
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
kind of like if they have a pretend if they have a cap gun and they all pretend it's real and they're like shooting each other and the other one dies, if you show up with one, they got to pretend to die if you shoot them too, because if not, the whole jig's up.
Yep.
That makes sense.
It does. I think the way the system works too, you were talking about how all of it's kind of like spells and stuff. And if you want to see that clearly, I think, I don't watch television. I haven't for a while. I don't own a TV. Well, actually, I'm looking at a TV, but I can't remember the last time it was turned on. But I've never had a cable bill my entire life. This TV that I'm looking at now, I got when I was 19. Um, and it's nothing fancy. It's not even hooked up to anything right now. But when you watch television, the mainstream, there's a cadence to it. They use certain words over and over. It's scripted heavily. Ask yourself, why will they show you a press conference, and then 3 seconds into them showing you the press conference, they want to narrate the press conference to you. They can't just let you listen to the dude standing behind the podium. They have to, kind of quiet that guy down, and then they're going to tell you what that guy said. But we're not going to let you listen to what that guy said, and there's going to be a cadence to it, and then everything is so scripted in terms of how they want you to perceive it. And it is true about how all of it is spelling. And a lot of this too was propped up by the educational system. We were kind of taught to go along with it. We weren't taught to question the authority. And now when I look back, it makes perfect sense. Why would they want to raise a society that's thinking for themselves? It's not in their best interest. That they need the button pushers and the people working the cash registers. Well, until they don't, which is a different topic, but
Yeah, yeah. And that's what actually gives me hope about this, because I feel that it's horrifying when see that there's stages when you discover what it is, like what you just said about the educational system. That might send some people spiraling that are listening to this, but it's provable. There's a
yeah,
book by John Taylor Gatto. Go read it. It's out there. If you haven't, it's on you. You're the one who's ignorant. Ignorant just means ignorant. You're just ignoring information in the area. I
yes.
knew it was an indoctrination camp because I only went the exact number of days I had to graduate my senior year, because I felt I
And
needed
I
it.
didn't even know you could do that. The
Yeah.
things you learn later in life.
Well, I didn't either. I just kept missing a bunch. And then at the end, they were like, listen, you can only miss one more day. And then so I was like, all right, I'm not coming tomorrow. And then I'm like, shit, I got to go senior skip day now. But whatever. I wanted to go to the Marines. And I needed the diploma at the time, I thought. But whatever. I'm glad I got it because, whatever. But it was
Yeah.
honestly, it could have, whatever. But, yeah, so I totally forgot where I was going with that, but that's okay because I always have so many other points to talk about.
The educational
Um,
system, how
yeah.
it's
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
designed to
Oh, so
indoctrinate. Yeah.
exactly. So people come to these realizations and they spiral. They're like, no way. But when you get past that, it's actually kind of easy to see that that's actually what it is. And it's really, at first it's horrifying, but once you realize that everybody is technically, not everybody, but most people in this country technically are slaves. It's
Yeah.
like I said, it's horrifying at first, but
Hey,
then you
I am. I
yeah.
still get a paycheck every week. You know what I mean?
Well, that doesn't make you a slave, because what I was gonna say is the second thing that I've discovered, in my mind, it doesn't make you a slave, maybe in your mind, but in my mind, it doesn't, because the prison is just in your mind. It's a mental slavery. So once you realize
Yeah.
that and you could break it, and once you're no longer affected by the world, because I was telling a friend of mine, I mean, you're still going to be affected by the world, but what I mean is it's like Jesus said, when you could be in the world but not of it. If you realize that the world is inverted, it's just backwards, then you're okay. Then you realize, oh, I see why everyone's doing this, and it doesn't dismay you. It's because of what happened to them in the past, and they're just living out their lives and everything is perfect. If you can get to that, I know it's a hard I'm still working on it. Everybody, it's like every day I work on it, but if you can get to that view, then I feel that you can let a lot more of this go. But that's where the acceptance comes. And then you accept, okay, I was a slave. Now I'm free in my mind. No matter what, I have to do things to survive. I have to get a job. Sometimes you have to have a paycheck, but it's okay. You can start to be okay with that self, and you can forgive yourself and be okay, because part of that mental slavery is that voice in your head that keeps telling you that you're a screw up, and that no, you're not doing this right, and you should do it this way, and you're not like everybody else, and all that stuff. That's part of, I feel, it's passed down generationally. And this is kind of what this is part of, because if you can take hold of yourself and stand up for yourself and in front of a police officer, like the fact that I just did that, even though I got a
Yeah.
ticket, but the
Yeah.
fact that I just said him, I wasn't going to give my name and I just stood there, but I was still smiling and like, swaying and
Yep.
being funny. It just gave me that confidence to be like, look, I'm a man. Like, and those guys, they knew they had to tread carefully. It wasn't like when I was a kid and they'd pull me over and throw me around and just whatever. It was like, whoa, this dude, he might know something. I don't want to get sued. I don't want to be on the news. I don't
Right.
want to be on YouTube. So I think this is really a good opportunity for a good chance for that. To really,
And I
because there's a
definitely
lot of
think
that
the
stuff
last
where
year or so, since the whole, Cooties 19 nonsense really
yeah.
kicked off, um, that, at least for me, and I think for other people as well, but it really exposed how absurd a lot of these things are. Like now there's kids going back to schools, and I'm seeing a full-size school bus carrying 3 children every day passing my house. And I'm like,
It's
what is
great.
this nonsense? And you got these kids standing, you know, all together at the corner without a mask, and then they get on the bus and they're wearing a mask and they're spaced out like every 5 seats.
Yeah, it's a
It's
liability thing,
nonsense.
right? Yeah, it's funny because
Yeah.
everyone's so afraid they don't want to be the one, and you're right. It really reminds me though when you're saying
Yep.
this, I hate to cut in, but it reminds me like of a Twilight Zone episode or like something like Rick and Morty, like the Cronenberg universe, but nobody notices it. Like I just watched the Truman Show, and that part in the Truman Show, if you've seen it or whoever's listening to this, where
Yep.
he's gonna back out and he gets his wife in the car and he's like, look, and he says the people are gonna walk by and he goes, they're on a loop. And that kind of blew my mind because human behavior, when you are a slave, it's just like animal behavior. You get on a loop and you perform the
Yeah.
same behaviors and you become unconscious of it and you just do it. Um that's what abusive substance abuse is about, and addictive behaviors are really about a lot of times. That was reminded of that when I went to the zoo and I saw this bear. I guess he used to be a circus bear, and he was just walking in the circle in his enclosure, and there was like a path where that was all he was doing the whole time, and he would do this twirl and this one thing the whole all day. He would just do this loop, and it's kind of like because he doesn't have freedom. So as mental slaves, we think we have freedom, and that's what enslaves us, is the thought that we think we're free and we don't want to cut through that, because what does that mean if we're not? It's too scary, right? So we're imprisoned by our own thoughts. So we
Yep.
just get stuck in these little addictions, whatever they are, whether it be booze is a big one, women, that was mine, porn, whatever it is, cigarettes, weed could be
Hit
addictive,
those dopamine receptors and you get hooked.
yeah, and then
And it could be anything.
you're
That's
able
the
to
thing.
engage in escapism, because then you could forget about the other stuff. You engage in the escapism, and it it's like oil that is just shitty oil, but it keeps you going so it doesn't blow your motor totally, but you can just get to the next exit, and then you're just next exit. That's really how I feel the whole society is. I just keep making judgments about society, but again, it's perfect, everybody. But once you wake up to that, like I said, it could be horrifying. But the best part is you can free yourself, and then it's great because you could do whatever you want. And once you realize this, like
Yeah.
I'm telling you, whoever's listening to this, I haven't worn a mask since this started. Like one
Same.
time I went to get a juicer and I drove an hour, and when this first started, and this guy's like, can you just put a mask on? So I put it half on for like a minute, and I got in his house and I took it off, but it's gross in his house anyway. So I'm like, maybe I should be wearing this mask, so, and then one time when
The
I
only
worked,
time I've worn a mask this whole time was when I was doing drywall, you know?
yeah, that's what
It's
I was
and even
painting.
that I'm still getting it in my nose and it's ridiculous. I'm like, "Oh, this thing's really stopping the COVID."
I
I
took
just
a picture.
breathed half of the sheet of sheetrock.
Exactly. It's saving your lungs a real way. That's what I say to people. I'm like, because everybody makes fun of people who wear masks in the by themselves in their car, and I'm like, well, they look stupid, but actually, they're probably preventing all the brake dust from going in their lungs, and they don't know it. So maybe they are. It's like, yeah. So you don't even know. But again, I feel more of that stuff has to do with state of mind. That really, to me, is if you're in a lower state of mind because of fear, that's like fight or flight. You're just
Yeah.
That's really what's going to kill you. That if
Well,
anyone,
I mean,
you know,
let's touch on that for a second because
yeah,
so I'm not too sure many people understand what's going on, but if anyone listening, if you have a friend that's an EMT or a firefighter, you can ask them to just stop by your house with something that they carry around with them every day. And I'm forgetting the technical name for it, but they'll know what I'm talking about. There's a device that will measure the oxygen intake. And basically, what it is, it's the sensor, and you can put it near your face and just wear a mask for 5-10 minutes. You put the sensor underneath that mask and just breathe normally. And that thing will go off typically within the first 30 seconds because you're not getting enough oxygen. And like these are standard equipment that every EMT and firefighters had, since before the 90s. It came with everything that they're getting. It's the things like when you reduce the oxygen going into your brain, you are put into a mental fight or flight response. Part of your brain, your brain waves are changing. You're not thinking, you're not able to make the logical conclusions because you're just looking for fight or flight. And I've seen this, being a dude that doesn't wear a mask, I see people's reactions. I walk into a store and instantly they're terrified. I could see it on their eyes. I don't need to see what their face looks like. I can see it right through their eyes. They're terrified that this dude has the cooties 19. I've seen people with double and triple masks and they're the most panicked. It's kind of, it's been eye-opening in the sense that, people are doing this to themselves. No one stopped anyone, held them to the floor and put a mask on them. They willingly put it on themselves. And in my opinion, that's due to spells. That was due to words because people convinced them in these fear tactics and said, you need to wear this to stop the cooties 19. You got to put this on your face. You got to harm yourself. You got to deprive yourself of oxygen. It's the only way to save you. If we would all just do this, we could save the world. It's kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I wasn't really able to enunciate why. So in the beginning, well, I won't make too many claims, but I'll just say that I knew I didn't wear a mask in the beginning, and I still don't. And I knew then that I was right. I couldn't exactly enunciate why, because people are
Yeah.
like, "Why don't you just wear it for now till it blow?" Just be good, nice. And now I can enunciate it, and it's because I knew that it was a change. Like it was going to change everything forever. It was never going to go back, and I just didn't want to be
Yeah.
part of that. Not that I was happy with the way the world was, but I wasn't going to be part of now making masks normal, and I knew basically that's what that was going to be. I just couldn't enunciate it fully. So, you know, anyone's listening to me now, it's like, yeah. And then in a couple of years, I think people are going to look back and be like, wow, we shouldn't have wore the mask. And I'm like, yeah, he's kind of trying to tell you. Remember when you're like, just be nice? And I was like, yeah, but
Yeah.
sometimes I am the nice guy. That's why I was like, guys, I am the fucking nice guy. Maybe if I'm not being nice, there's a reason you should listen because I do everything else. I'm really nice. I always give people rides to the airport. That's the things I had to work on is building boundaries because sometimes I'm too nice until the fact that I blow up. But I've worked on that a lot. But now it's like, guys, I am the nice one. And I don't want to wear the
Yeah.
mask because it's not nice. Because you're not being
Yeah.
nice to me. What about me? Like, because before I did like to wear masks when it was cold. I'd cover my face and I felt like a ninja and I kind of like to hide my identity anyway. But then once everyone started doing it, I'm such a contrarian that I freaked out. I'm like, I can't.
Yeah.
Everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
So now at least, you could put on my fucking gravestone. Like we were talking about this on my other podcast where we're like, what's more comedy and we're silly. And we're like trying to think of things to put on gravestones. And I thought of something like funny, but now I'm like, maybe it's just going to be Brandon No Mask Jones Smith because my last name is Smith. Because it's like, dude, I don't know, man. And it's great because my middle name is actually John. So it'll be Brandon and it'll fit no mask. And then John, it'll be gold. Like Brandon will be gold. John will be gold. Smith. All right, we're going off. You get what I'm saying. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I hope by the time I leave this realm that masks aren't an issue, but who knows?
I mean, we're doing pretty good on that 1 year of 15 days to slow the spread. I'm
Yeah,
liking
that's
it,
what I'm saying, man.
I watched that little press briefing. It was the COVID-19, what was something preparedness? I don't know. Something that the White House was doing live streams almost daily on the YouTubes. And Pence must have said at easily 60 times, if that was a drinking game, I'd be dead. You know, just 15 days to slow the spread, 15 days to slow the spread. He said it over and over and
Mm,
over. And
yeah.
I remember watching it at the time and I'm like, oh, this is key. Like, don't miss this, guys. Like, what are you seeing? He's saying this so many times for a reason. This is BS. Like, this isn't going to be 15 days. There's a reason he's saying this half a million times. He's trying to pre-program it into people's minds and it's not going to add up. And here we are a year later. I like to when people ask me to wear the mask, I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because COVID-19. What? No, that was done a year ago. What are you talking about? And
15 days, remember?
and it's just some people, they just don't know how to take it and they kind of spiral. And some people leave me alone, and some people start laughing. It really depends on where you're at. But and actually, just today, I went into the gas station and there was someone behind the register, and they still had the plexiglass up, but she wasn't wearing a mask, and that put a smile on my face. And I looked at her and I told her, I was like, it's nice to see people working not wearing a mask. I was like, thank you. And she smiled right back, and she got it. She understood, because she's one of the odd ones out. I don't see too many people around here, at least where I'm at. And right now I'm in Connecticut, but I'm in Massachusetts a lot. I don't know if I've ever seen another person that was working somewhere not wearing a mask. I think the only time I've seen it was a tow truck driver and a dude that was working as a mechanic, and that was in a garage bay. It's rare that people don't wear masks, because I mean, can't blame them. We're easily cucked.
Mm.
That's the American population.
Yeah, if I see somebody without a mask, I'm like, this guy's a fucking legend. I'll fucking
Yeah,
yell it,
yeah.
man. I'm like, legend, because I don't never see it. Like, I had a experience about a month or so ago where I was asked. Well, I wasn't asked. This guy actually ended up screaming at me high pitchedly. It was so funny to leave an auto
Later.
auction, and this guy was the owner of the auto auction, because I would not take it
Ooh,
from anyone. I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. But there was another gentleman there when this was all going down, that I guess he worked there, or so he brought cars or whatever, but he worked with them and he didn't have a mask either. And he came up to me and he's like, "You're a fucking legend." And I told him about the book I'm writing and all this stuff. And since I've contacted him, and it turns out he's into like hermeticism and all this crazy stuff. And I was
nice.
like, yeah, I was, and he's like, Carl Jung said nothing happens by mistake. He's like, I believe that, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, many, many paths to the mountaintop, same mountaintop, but it was
Yeah,
crazy. And that's something I'm probably going to recount on a show. I think that experience deserves, but not here. But that definitely deserves a retelling, because that was a funny, funny story that ended up, like I said, the owner of the place coming out screaming at me, like, get out of here. It was, and I was like laughing. And since I was there representing somebody else's business, it wasn't my own. I was like, let me just go. I caused enough trouble. But if it was just me, I probably would have just sat down or been like, I'll call the cops if you want, because now you're harassing me. Like, now you're screaming.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
just public. I'm just John Q. I'm a man who's trying to feed my family, and you're preventing me from feeding my family. You get what I'm saying? Even though my family's just me and my two black cats.
I got a wife and kids, man.
Oh, I also want to say this too, because I want to get this on the record, because I've said some crazy things since this all been started. But I told people, when they ask me about the mask, usually I'll just tell them, I have an exemption. But if they really start to ask me, I say, listen, I take somebody covering my face as a direct threat upon my life, which authorizes
Yeah,
me to use deadly force. Just so you know, like, and they're like, look at me. I'm like, yeah, I mean, and that's like a universal law. I don't care what the police or whatever say. That's between me,
yeah.
the person who created me, and I don't fear a cage. And they're just like, okay, you can go. I'm like, thanks.
Yep, yep.
So
At
it's like,
first when this
come on,
started,
man.
all my responses were comedic, and
Yeah.
I'd even throw stuff out there like, "Oh, well, it's illegal to wear a mask and have a firearm on you,"
Yeah.
and just leave it at that. But now it's like, as it got more and more into it, I'm seeing the fear in people's eyes. It's more serious, and I'm trying to, you know, when someone approaches me, I'm trying to be very careful with the words that I'm using, because, like what you said earlier, it all comes down to the words. And I know that the employees don't quite get it, but at some point they're going to be waking up to this. They're either going to wake up or die. I mean, that's my opinion of it. When you have blood acidity levels going through the roof because of a lack of oxygen, you develop cancer, and
Mm.
that's the hard science. It's been settled.
And I also want to just really quickly, the not only lack of oxygen, but the extra carbon dioxide, and
Yep.
not being able to displace that from your body is what's dangerous. Because there's ways to test that makes it seem like you're still getting the right amount of oxygen. Because because I looked into this and nerded out, but it was a while ago. So I know some people might hear that and be like, well, there's a way, and look, you're still getting oxygen. but yeah, but you're not expelling your exhaust. So there's not only
Yeah.
carbon dioxide in there, but there's other stuff you need to get rid of too. So yeah, everything you're saying is totally true. And that hypercapnia is what that is when you,
Yep.
so look into that, everybody, if you haven't. And then, who knows what's on these masks, the bacteria, which is a real thing, bacteria
I
is
mean,
from
your body is when you're breathing in oxygen, you're taking it in, and then you're exhaling what your body can't use. And so you're trapping all of that in a mask, and then you're going to use that as a filter for your air for the next what, couple hours? Well, let's say you're at work. That's going to be the next 8 hours of your life that you're breathing through a dirty filter. And that's not healthy. And another thing too is the insurance doesn't cover that. A lot of people's insurance policies, if you call them up and you don't just ask the first dude that answers, you ask to speak to someone that really knows their shit. And you say, I want to find out if I'm covered if I'm wearing a mask. And a lot of these places don't. A lot of these insurance companies, you are not covered if you're wearing a mask. If you get in an auto accident with a mask, you're not covered. If you're in a hospital and something happens with the mask, you're not covered. If you're in certain, like I know trampoline parks, amusement parks, things like that, bowling alleys, places where there's lots of people, and they have to have insurance because it could be a problem if someone gets injured. Those places will not cover the liability insurance if they're wearing a mask, and that's because the science of that proves that you are not at your best when you're suffocating yourself. Who would have thought? You
And
know?
I'll just break in really quick to say that even if you believe that there is a virus out there that's harmful to you, what this is provably, the insurance company is putting their money where their mouth is saying,
Yeah.
and they're saying it is more dangerous for you to not breathe in air than to be worried about a virus or a sickness or a pandemic. That's what they're saying. Because if they're more worried about the sickness, they would make you cover your face, because if you got the sickness on their property, they would be liable too. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? And that's where I feel that people who have a that can see a lot of logical things and put it together. And I get it, not everybody is that way, but people who can see that, like me, because I'm a poker player and all these things, and I play chess, I see all these things and I'm like, that doesn't add up. What's going on? And I don't know why, but then later I can enunciate it because it takes my brain time to process everything. And I feel that we're the people who weren't really listened to too much, but I don't want to stray too far from the subject because I think, we're nailing it though with all this stuff. But I just did get an idea. I think we should do an episode talking about mask stories that happened to us. And we can even
Oof.
invite somebody else on that's had an
That's a couple
experience.
episodes right there.
Yeah, I had some good ones. I screamed around calling people Nazis one time, like when this first happened. Oh, it was great. But it was, yeah, so but and I
I've had the
also think
cops called on me half a dozen
oh,
times.
oh
I've been in
really?
federal facilities. I've been across 8 states. I've purchased cars, been to the DMV. Uh, I got stories for days.
Have you flown yet?
That is one thing that I haven't done, and the only reason why I haven't done it yet is because I want to have my ducks in a row. Because if they try to make me not get on a plane or try to force a mask on me or discriminate against me, I want to be very well prepared
Yeah,
because
yeah,
that's
I
going to
hear
be a
you.
nice payday. You can't discriminate.
Dude,
That's illegal.
let's take a trip. Listen, this is what I got. If you want to go to Australia, we're
I'm
all
down.
set. If you want to go to Turkey, we're all set. If you want to go to, let's see, where else can I stay? And we're all set. Probably LA, we can stay.
I
Yeah,
wouldn't even
so
mind doing a couple domestic flights because you don't
yeah,
need passports or anything.
good
And
idea. It's a
once we
one
get that
shot
squared
flight.
away,
Yeah. Oh, you know what we could do? We could go to Florida because I have friends down there that I could stay with for sure.
perfect.
Yeah, and those flights are cheap. Let's do that and see what happens. We'll fly right out of Bradley.
I know a couple constitutional attorneys. Got them on speed dial.
All right. Yeah, and I don't
Let's do
care.
it.
I got like I could record it for days, man. We could just That's what people don't understand is like my mask interactions, I wish I recorded them because I'd be an internet superstar by now, just on small
Yeah,
like levels. And that's not why I'm doing it. I would just be recording
right.
for witnesses. But yeah,
No,
let's
you're
do
just standing
Florida.
up for yourself, and that's
Yeah.
the unfortunate truth of the situation is you're being well. All of us that choose not to wear a mask are forced into a position of outing yourself because you have now made yourself the odd one out. You're not like everyone else. You stand out because hey, look, that guy doesn't fit in. You could see his smile. How dare he? Sir, you are being selfish.
we could make a whole documentary about flying maskless, man. That'd be great because there's so many
Ooh,
people.
that would be
This
very good.
is when I hear people, they're always like, "Did you fly?" Like I asked you, that's the one that everyone wants to hear about. So if we have evidence, and then people can also see we're not shills, like that's the best part about me
Yeah.
on my YouTube. Just for people listening, if you go to the Brandon Bonanza YouTube, it used to be Comedy LOL, and you could go back to like 2013 or maybe 2014 when I was just with open mic comics and we were doing like Joe Rogan style stuff, but all those videos are there. So all my views on things back then, so you could just like tell I'm not a shill. You could just go back and I mean, I'd have to be, you know, the level of shilldom I would have to put in. I'd be like worse than Alex Jones if I had.
Oh shoot, and that
But
guy's
yeah,
pretty cringe.
yeah, right.
Oof.
But yeah, so I think this is a good place to wrap up this recording to keep it
Yeah.
listenable for people, and we can get into my situation maybe next in the next episode and then whatever. But
All right. Cool.
yeah, man, do you have anything that you want anyone to check out, or like a channel if people want to follow you or for now,
Not
or
really.
okay.
I know earlier we were talking about the legal and lawful stuff. A couple people to look into: Carl Lentz, spelled with a K, Karl Lentz. He's got a lot of recordings online, and I know a number of people have taken those recordings and put them up on YouTube. Should be pretty easy to find. He's a legend because at the end of the day, the legal and lawful stuff is you really it's choosing how you want to proceed in your fight, on paper. You are free to choose however you want to handle that. Your response is your own. So you really want to check out a lot of what all these people are doing and see all of their styles and then build your own. So one guy is Carl Lentz, another one, Alphonse Fagiolo.
Oh, I love that
He was
guy.
on Crow 777. He's got a lot of great information. I think he has a Telegram channel as well. Um, let's see. Anna Von Reitz is another good one, but she was a former judge. That one's very interesting because there is a lot of information on her website, but I haven't seen her taking a stance on things. And then a constitutional lawyer, or I think law attorney. I don't know. I think I'm using the word attorney where it shouldn't be used. Um,
That's right. Could
Rick
it be?
Martin.
We won't hold you
Yeah, could
liable.
it be? Yeah, I'm still ungrabbling my mind from the wizard spells, guys. Give me some
Yeah.
slack. Rick Martin is his name. He's based out of Texas. He's, again, wealth of information, dude that drives around without a license plate or a license, and he has won many times on that. So there are people out here doing this, but the system obviously they're not going to promote that. So it's really up to you to keep your eye open. And when you see someone or see something going on where, hey, that guy isn't, he's not following the rest of the sheep, take mental note of that and write it down or to look more into it because you can find a lot of info that way.
Yeah, that's true.
And
And
that's pretty much all I got.
all right. Well, I want to add to that a little bit and just say through my
Yeah.
all my experiences with this, I started off calling people Nazis and all this stuff, and then now I'm at the point where I just basically try to be invisible, and I just try to. Well, I guess I can't really say I'm invisible because I'll smile at people, and I'm tall. I'm like 6'4", so I'm just like, and I have this hair,
You
and it's
blend in like a Jedi.
yeah, exactly. So I just smile
That's
at
the key.
people. Yeah. And then if somebody does confront me, what I've been doing is I just smile. I look at them and I just go like this. It's an old trick from the car business. And we used to do this to each other to mess with each other. Like if you ask me a question, if you're like, hey, Brandon, do you like French fries? I'd be like, no. It's like really confusing. So if someone's like, oh, you need a mask, I'm like, you're right. And then I'm like, but I have an exemption, and then I give it a pause and let it get some air because I know I talk too fast. And this is a tip for anybody when you have to confront people in public. If you're not used to it, see, I did comedy for a few years. I've been a DJ forever. I'm just used to this stuff. So I'm used to being in front of people and then watching videos of myself for hours and cringing.
Mm.
So I know what it's like. So I
Yeah, you
know
do
that
learn information that way. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
you have to slow down. So what I do is I try to speak very slowly and clearly and then give pauses. And then sometimes because what happens is if these people they don't want to come up to you, most of them, and even if they do, they have some kind of adrenaline going because they're either mad at you or they're scared that they have to talk to you because they don't want to because it's their job. So I try to keep it very calm, keep telling them that they're right because if you tell them that they're right, they have no argument, really. And then I just say,
Yeah.
oh, but I have an exemption. And I'm like, it's totally legal. I've been here a million times. Like I'll say it when I'm at the grocery store or whatever, because it's up to the employee. Like, they always come up to you. And usually that's fine. Usually it leaves them, they leave me alone. But if not, I just tell them, I'll politely remind them or inform them that a mask is a medical device. And by telling somebody to wear a medical device and you're not a professional, it's actually against the law. And if you have your face
Yes,
covered while doing it like you
it
do,
is.
exactly, it's against the law. And then because they have a mask and they're talking to you, so they're covering their face. So I let them know that when you cover your face and you commit a crime such as giving medical advice, you double the crime. It's like if you are on the highway and you blow through a construction zone, your penalty is now double. I'm just letting you know. I can't do anything about it, but I could technically
Yep.
do a citizen's arrest on you. I can use proper force. It's in the law book. I can
And
hold
call
you
the
until the
sheriff.
police. Yeah, exactly. So I don't want to do any of this. What I'm saying is I'm telling you this because the next scumbag that comes along, if you do it to him, he can sue you. He could take your
Yeah.
house. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I've told people this before. So, I just try to be cool. I always try to defuse the situation because at the end of the day, I know that somebody's going to benefit. If I fight with this person, somebody else is going to benefit, whether it's the government or a corporation or the devil or Beelzebub or like whatever. Somebody besides me and this other person is going to benefit from our negative exchange. So why even have it? It's like
Yeah.
poker. If I don't know exactly what the other guy has, but I know he doesn't want me to go all in. So I'm all in, and then he's going to be like, damn it. Yeah. All right, good. So yeah. And then I wanted to say that. And then also, I want to promote myself a little bit. Anyone listening to this, go check out my website, shadowwork.com. You can read the first 2 chapters of my book, and hopefully very soon you could read the whole thing. That's at shadowworked, SHADOWWORKED.com, and sign up there. Awesome.
Did it work?
You think so?
The shadow?
Yeah, it worked it all day. Work it, work it. It's shadow slavery, everybody. I was working it without paying it. Hey, it's a comedy podcast, allegedly. All right, guys, thanks for
Allegedly.
listening to the show with no name that we have so far. If you want to you can contact me. Go to Brandon. It's Brandon at shadowwork.com is an email that you can reach me at if you have any questions you want to add to this, or comment below, like this video wherever it is, share it, give it to everybody, shove it down their throat. No, don't do that. If people aren't ready to hear this information, it's fine. Just share it with the people who are ready.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
They'll figure it out eventually.
Exactly.